evening, friends. On a Sunday evening, meeting all the lawyers, students of law on a perspective to be understood by a judge who is known for his judgments and also being an erudite speaker gives you an immense pleasure to introduce him so that we can have a knowledge sharing from his part. Rather, it will be only receiving of knowledge. Sharing is what we commonly say, but once a speaker who is giving insights on different perspective of law, which is being commonly used, that is the police report under section 173 of the CRPC and functions of the magistrate, is a topic which is, I can say, quite close to the hearts of the lawyers as well as judicial officers, as well as students of law and those who are teaching in law. As such, without taking much time, I would request Honorable Mr. Justice K.N. Phanindra, who has been known for his judgments as well as I earlier said, for his insights on a topic. We had requested him to give the insights on this topic, and he was kind enough to accept our invite and to share his knowledge, which we all are so glad that he has acceded to our request, and the people that we are thronging on the Facebook as well as on this platform on a Sunday evening shows his immense popularity on all spectrums of the society. And amongst us, I am seeing his popularity can be gauged from the fact that S.K. Premraj Menon, who also runs these webinars, I was seeing that today was his 125th one. He has joined immediately thereafter. Shows that Sir's popularity pan-India to that effect that immediately rushing in from one webinar to the other after hosting it only shows that people are just willing to learn from him. Over to you, sir. Without taking much time, I'll ask you to take over.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vikas. I think I am audible and visible.
Perfect, sir.
I am very grateful to the organizers of this webinar and having invited me to share few of my thoughts with reference to the subject which has been selected by me. The webinars are very well organized by the members of the organization, and I have gone through some of the webinars which are hosted in YouTube and which are very, very informative, and for the regular practitioners, it will be very helpful. So with this prelude, once again, thanking you all, I begin so far as my subject is concerned. The subject under section 173 of Criminal Procedure Code has a major role to play so far as with reference to the police and the court, and as well as the accused and the complainant or the first informant who has given the information to the police or filed a case before the court under section 200 of CRPC and having got referred the case for investigation under section 156 subclass 3 of Criminal Procedure Code. Before directly referring to section 173 of Criminal Procedure Code, we have to know that there are several sources for the police for the purpose of filing this report under section 173 of the code. First of all, the investigation begins so far as the cognizable offences are concerned whenever information is submitted to the police under section 154 of Criminal Procedure Code. The police, after registration of the case, either directly on the information given by the informant if it discloses a cognizable offence, or after making preliminary inquiry if the police are of the opinion that a cognizable offence has been committed or suspected, then they can register the case under section 154 and proceed to investigate under section 157 and 158 onwards. The second source is that under section 156 subclass 3 of Criminal Procedure Code, whenever the jurisdictional magistrate or the court refers the case for investigation and report, the police will register the said case as if an FIR lodged by a particular person, and it is the domain of the police to investigate the matter and submit the report to the court. The third important aspect is that so far as non-cognizable offences are concerned, under section 155 of Criminal Procedure Code, the police cannot investigate the matter without the permission of the magistrate or order of the magistrate. So the party has to approach the police for the purpose of getting investigated the non-cognizable offence. In such an eventuality, the magistrate has to refer the complainant or the informant to the magistrate, and magistrate, after applying his judicious mind, will order for investigation and report. These are the three important major sources where the police will get the information, and after the investigation, they file one report that is called as a police report under section 173. You may be astonished that there is no word as such a B report, C report, or A report, or a charge sheet recognized under the Criminal Procedure Code. What section 173 recognizes? A report. Even it doesn't speak about a final report. When final report, it depends upon the facts and circumstances of each case, when the finality reaches before the court so far as the police report is concerned. So therefore, only one report is recognized under the Criminal Procedure Code, that is under section 173 of the code. Before directly adverting to the provision under section 173 as to how the police officers have to submit the report before the court, what are their responsibilities while submitting the report under this section, and what the magistrate can do after submitting the said report. It is to be borne in mind that the report can be submitted to the jurisdictional magistrate or to the special court if the cognizance power is invested to the special courts. In, for example, special enactments are there, POCSO Act, Atrocities Act, like that. The special provisions are made in the Act itself, special enactments where the special courts can take cognizance, where virtually those special judges act as magistrates. Magistrates are all practical purposes for the purpose of examining the report filed under section 173 and for the purpose of taking cognizance or for order for further investigation, etc. So therefore, once the report is report has to be filed by the police have to undergo certain procedures. As I told you that under three sources, if the police get the information, they will investigate, proceeding to the spot under section 157. And if they find that there is suspicion with regard to commission of the offense, or actually the offense has been committed, then they can proceed further with the investigation. Otherwise, they can close the, inform the complainant that there is no offense is committed, though there is no question of investigating the matter itself. Then the question of filing any report before the police doesn't arise. Then they will inform the police that there is no offense has been committed by filing what we call it as a report, a closure report, and requesting the magistrate to close the matter. So the second step, that if the magistrate, if the police officers proceed to investigate, either they have to file the report after expressing their opinion under section 169 of Criminal Procedure Code or under section 170 of Criminal Procedure Code. So far as section 169 is concerned, it is refers that where the police officer, after investigation, comes to the conclusion that no case is made out for the purpose of sending the accused to the trial, and no sufficient evidence has been secured by the police for the purpose of suspecting that the accused has committed such an offense, or it may be a false case, or the case cannot be detected by the police, or it is purely civil in nature. The police cannot investigate the matter, or if there is a bar under any law for the time being in force, where the criminal private complaint is contemplated under various provisions of the Criminal Procedure Code. In such an eventuality, the police will not get any powers to investigate and file the report under section 173. In such an eventuality, the police will file a report Normally, we call them as B report. Though Section 173 doesn't speak about the filing of the B report, but normally we call it as under the Police Act and a police manual, they refer it to B report, B summary report. So now we shall glance through Section 169 and 170 of Criminal Procedure Code. 169 deals with the police officer's examination of the materials after registering a case under Section 154 or referred under Section 156 of Class 3 or under Section 155 of Criminal Procedure Code with reference to a non-cognizable offenses. After going through the entire materials on record, the police officer has to form an opinion in his report that there is no case made out and the evidence is so insufficient, and further the police cannot refer the accused to the trial before the magistrate. In such an eventuality, if the offense alleged was bailable or non-bailable, whatever it may be, when the police officer formulates an opinion under Section 169 that there is absolutely no case made out and no evidence available to send the accused to the trial, in such an eventuality, he has to take bond from the accused and release him, and then submit the report to the court, explaining the reasons for submitting such report. His opinion should be explicit why he should not send the accused to the trial before the magistrate. What's the reason? That is what I told you, that if the case is not made out and a civil case is made out, no criminal case is available, and then it is not detectable case and it is a false case on the face of the record after investigation, explaining all these reasons, the police officer has to submit the report under Section 173 after taking bond from the accused. I will tell you why the bond has to be taken by the police. Section 170 of Criminal Procedure Code contemplates that if the police officer comes to the conclusion that there is sufficient evidence to proceed against the accused for the purpose of sending him to trial, in such an eventuality, the magistrate, the police officer with a specific record as contemplated in a separate format as provided by the state government or the central government under Section 173 of Criminal Procedure Code, he has to complete the said format and submit the report to the jurisdictional magistrate or the special court. That normally what we call it as a charge sheet. So here what the police officer has to do is that after recording the statement of the witnesses and after collecting all the documentary evidence and as well as material objects during the course of investigation, he has to form an opinion that there is sufficient evidence or sufficient materials to send the accused to the court for trial. In such an eventuality, two things have to be looked into. One is, if the offense is bailable in nature, the police officer himself can release the accused on bail after taking the bond and submit the report to the court under Section 173, directing the accused to appear before the court on a day fixed or day to day as and when fixed by the court to appear before the court, unless the magistrate who has received the first information report and the report under Section 173 directs otherwise to the police. So far as non-bailable offences are concerned, if the accused is in custody of the police themselves, if the charge sheet was so fastly filed within one day, in such an eventuality, if the police officer doesn't release the accused on bail, he has to submit the report along with the accused to the court, along with all the materials collected by him. So therefore, the opinion of the police officer under these two provisions under Section 169 and 170 is very important to be noted. So what happens if the complaint is referred to under Section 156 of Class 3 of Criminal Procedure Code? So you all know about the Priyanka Srivastava's case. The magistrate has to examine the contents of the private complaint and then examine whether the compliance has been made as contemplated under section 154 subclass 3 of Criminal Procedure Code. That is, if the police officer before whom the first information report was lodged has not taken any action, and thereafter the party has approached the superintendent of police by way of sending the information by way of registered post or personally handed over that report to the superintendent of police. And in spite of that, no action has been taken on the report submitted by the complainant. And an affidavit has to be filed before the court that he has complied with the section 154 subclass 3 of Criminal Procedure Code. Then only the magistrate gets jurisdiction to refer the complaint for investigation under section 156 subclass 3. We have to bear in mind that there is no embargo to the magistrate to directly take cognizance. It is Priyanka Srivastava case is only applicable so far as whenever the magistrate decides to refer the case for investigation under section 156 subclass 3. For the purpose of taking cognizance of the offense directly on the complaint, there is no embargo for the magistrate to act upon the same and take cognizance and inquire into the matter personally by himself. Or if he reaches the stage of 202 of Criminal Procedure Code, there also the magistrate can refer the complaint to the police or any other agency as he feels just and necessary for the purpose of getting a report. So here one should bear in mind that the reference under section 202 and reference under section 156 subclass 3 altogether at different stages. The magistrate cannot normally refer the complaint under section 156 subclass 3 after he takes cognizance, records the statement of the complainant and his witnesses. He can only get jurisdiction under section 202 for the purpose of satisfying himself with regard to the genuineness of the complaint averments and satisfaction with regard to the offense being committed. He can refer the complaint under section 202 for the purpose of getting the report. The difference here is that once the complaint is referred under section 156 subclass 3, it virtually falls under section 154 for the purpose of registration of FIR and for the purpose of investigation, and the magistrate normally will not interfere with the investigation of the police. He will wait for the report under section 173, and thereafter the powers of the magistrate would start, functions of the magistrate would start. So far as section 202 reference is concerned, it is the court which is inquiring into the matter. Once it takes cognizance, it shows that the court is actually inquiring into the matter. And court itself wants some investigation through some agency. Investigation is not for the purpose of collecting so much of materials, but for the purpose of satisfying the genuineness of the complaint. Whenever the accused is residing outside the jurisdiction of the magistrate, normally the magistrate would collect the materials under section 202 and proceed with the case under section 203 for the purpose of dismissing the complaint if no case is made out, or if sufficient materials are placed for the consideration of the magistrate, he will proceed to take cognizance, he will proceed to issue process under section 204 of Criminal Procedure Code. So that is the distinction one has to understand with reference to the reference under section 156 of class 3 and 202 of Criminal Procedure Code. So therefore, as I have told you that only one report is contemplated under section 173 of Criminal Procedure Code. These important aspects has been considered by the Apex Court in two important decisions in H.N. Rishbudh versus State of Delhi, 1955, Supreme Court, page 196, and Bharat Singh versus State, AIR, 1951, Supreme Court, page 441, with reference to the reference under section 156 of class 3 and 202, and only one report is contemplated. All those things have been considered by the apex court. So having come to the second stage, that is the report after opinion under section 169 or the opinion under section 170, anyway, the report has to be submitted to the court. Whatever may be the nature of report, whether there is no offense is detected, whether it is a false case, etc. Totally, the report has to be submitted to the magistrate for his consideration. Now, the section 173 contemplates certain procedures, and certain substantive provisions are incorporated in the section 173, though it is a procedural law. See, the first provision is referable to the investigation under this chapter shall be completed within unnecessary delay. So unnecessary delay, how we have to be understood? Understand unnecessary delay. Normally, Article 21 of the Constitution of India, which empowers a person for speedy remedy and speedy disposal of the case against him. Even one step I will go forward, that even present day scenarios, the delay in the cases being conducted before the court, cases being investigated by the police, it is not only the right of the accused for under Article 21 for speedy disposal, it is also the right of the complainant to see that the investigation is completed as fast as possible and he gets the justice before the court as early as possible. So Article 21, not only to be construed, it is a speedy remedy to the accused only, but it is a speedy remedy to the complainant or the informant or even to the society. Because once the case is filed before the court, it has got various dimensions. One is towards the accused, one is towards the victim, another is towards the society. Society is always is going to be affected by delayed disposal of the cases, delay in investigation. Society will actually standardize the investigating agency and the courts on the basis of these aspects. Therefore, in that context, we have to understand that there should not be unnecessary delay in completing the investigation. This particular provision, in my opinion, is virtually substantive in nature, though it is not specifically mentioned the time limit for the purpose of completing the investigation. Whenever exercising the powers under section 482 CRPC, the High Court or the Supreme Court, sometimes they will fix the time for finalizing the investigation and submitting the report. But law doesn't contemplate within what time the investigation has to be completed if the accused is at large, unless section 468 is violated. So we have to see, so far as this aspect is concerned, section 468 of Criminal Procedure Code and 167 of Criminal Procedure Code and 167 subclass 5 of Criminal Procedure Code. So if you look at these three provisions, 468 prescribes the limitation for the purpose of taking cognizance, not for the purpose of completing the investigation and submitting the report. Even after the lapse of such period of limitation fixed under section 468, if the police file a report, there are certain provisions under section 468 to 474, where under what circumstances the court can exclude the period, or even it can condone the delay under section 474 if genuine reasons are assigned by the police for condonation of the delay. If it is not condoned, question arises whether cognizance can be taken. So under section 468, as you know, that if the offense is punishable with fine only, the final report has to be, report has to be submitted within 6 months, and 1 year if the punishment doesn't exceed 1 year, and 3 years if the punishment doesn't exceed 1 year but not exceeding 3 years. And no limitation is fixed if the offense is punishable with punishment of more than 3 years. So it doesn't mean to say that merely because no limitation is fixed, for the purpose of investigation and taking cognizance for the offences which are punishable under the provisions of law exceeding 3 years. Therefore, the section 468, section 173, starting with the first clause, that it shall be completed without unnecessary delay. So the discretion vests with the courts, how the delay has to be considered. In various circumstances, the delay, which is the party has approached the court under section 482, because of delay, some proceedings are quashed. So therefore, whether it is reasonable or unreasonable, where it is not provided under the act or provided under the any code, it is left to the discretion of the court to consider whether there is unreasonable delay in investigating the matter and submitting the report. Whether it prejudicially affected the accused so as to quash the proceedings, or still the order can be passed to continue the process. The second important aspect that should be looked into is that under section 162, 167, subclass 2, subclass Roman 1 and Roman 2, the period is prescribed there where the accused is languishing in custody. Under what circumstances the report has to be submitted. If the offense is punishable with a life imprisonment, the 90 days prescribed for the purpose of completing the investigation and submitting the report. So far as the other offenses are concerned, 60 days is prescribed. You must be bear in mind that this is not the prescription of limitation for the purpose of filing the report, but it only enables the accused to get rid of that custody and come out as getting the statutory bail. It is only for the purpose of exercising the powers by the magistrate under section 162, 167, subclass 2, subclass 1, subclass 2, that the magistrate cannot remand the accused. If he cannot remand the accused, automatically, if the accused is ready and willing to furnish surety to the satisfaction of the court, he is entitled for a default bail, or what we call it as a statutory bail. So this is another provision, though we have to understand that no limitation is prescribed for the purpose of filing the report here. But if the report is not submitted within such time, what is the consequence is only stated, but no limitation as such is prescribed for the purpose of to the police to file the report. You might have come across in various cases where the police have not filed the report even after lapse of 90 days and 60 days, where the accused persons were statutorily released on bail, and thereafter the reports have been submitted. They need not file any explanation for that, for the purpose of filing the report after 90 days or 60 days. But they have to file the seek for permission of the court if the case is filed beyond the period of limitation which is prescribed under section 468. That is one has to understand in this particular aspect. In another one important provision so far as completing the investigation is that under section 167 subclass 5, in summons cases, if the report is not submitted within 6 months, the magistrate who has received the first information report has got power to direct the police to stop the investigation. Then the police have to come forward before the magistrate explaining what is the reason that they could not file the report within the period of 6 months. Only it is applicable to summons cases, not to the warrant cases or the sessions cases. So therefore, what we can understand is that unnecessary delay should be avoided by the courts. So in several cases, the apex court has considered this particular aspect, how the delay will prejudice the accused, how the delay will not only prejudice the accused, causes great inconvenience and injustice so far as the victim is concerned. So the latest decision of the apex court in Dilawar versus State of Haryana in 2018, within brackets 16 SCC page 521, and Matthew Arreparamatil versus State of Bihar 1985, Criminal Law Journal page 357, and Ajit Singh versus State of Delhi, AIR 1970, Delhi 154. And lastly, R.P. Kapoor versus State of Punjab, AIR 1960, Supreme Court, page 866. In these cases, the Apex Court has taken a serious view with regard to unnecessary delay in submitting the charge sheet. In one of the cases, the Supreme Court has directed to stop the proceedings and directed the magistrate, if the accused is in custody, release the accused on bail. And if the police want to file a report and further investigate the matter, they have to take the permission of the magistrate and then proceed with the investigation. So that is the direction issued by the Supreme Court in one of the above said decision. So far as the report is concerned, though the word magistrate is used in the provision, it is virtually the magistrate acts as a court, either for accepting the report or for rejecting the report or for passing any other transitory orders after securing the report or after the report is filed under section 173. The Supreme Court has said that it is the court used, it is not the whims and fancies of the magistrate to direct the police under section 156 subclass 3 or even after filing of the report to return the report to the police and asking the police to file a charge sheet. The magistrate cannot say what type of report that should be filed by the police. That is, as I told you, it is the complete prerogative of the police. The police have to investigate it and file the report according to the materials available on record. They will have to apply their own mind in accordance with law and file the report. In two decisions, Supreme Court has come heavily on the magistrates when they have ordered for filing of the charge sheet, directing the police to file a charge sheet only. See, it is only report is contemplated under section 173, not the charge sheet. No word as such used in the said provision, the charge sheet or a final report or B report, as I've told you. In one of the decisions in Rupan Deval Bajaj versus KPS Gill, 1995, within brackets 4, crimes 171. In another ruling, Nirmal Singh versus State of Uttar Pradesh, 1979, Criminal Law Journal, page 226. In the KPS Gill's case, the Supreme Court has said that the court cannot order for directing the police to file a charge sheet. In second ruling, the Supreme Court has observed that under section 195 of Criminal Procedure Code, it contemplates several provisions of the Indian Penal Code where such offences are committed before the court, then the magistrate can lodge a complaint through its shirastedar or the competent officer of the court to lodge a complaint against the person who has committed the offence before the court. So in such an eventuality, the magistrate who takes cognizance or the magistrate who refers the complaint, he cannot direct the police or he cannot direct the magistrate who is taking cognizance to take cognizance. It is the prerogative of the magistrate who take cognizance to apply his mind under section 190 of Criminal Procedure Code to ascertain whether the facts which are enumerated in the private complaint or in the first information report, whether it constituted any offense. If no offense is constituted, then there is no question of taking cognizance of any offense by the magistrate. These two important aspects have been considered by the Apex Court in the above said decisions. And the Supreme Court also considered the various aspects, powers of the magistrate after filing of the report. So once the report under section 173 is filed, the magistrate has got absolute powers either to accept it, close the case. That is what normally we call it as closure order. So under section 169, if the opinion of the magistrate is to the effect that no case is made out or no evidence is available to send the accused for trial, or the evidence is so insufficient that therefore the police officer has come to the conclusion that no final accused can be sent to the court for trial. In such an eventuality, magistrate has got option After going through the entire materials on record, as you know, it is normally casually called as B report. The magistrate has to go through the entire report submitted by the police. If he agrees with the report submitted by the police, yes, this is a fit case for closure. In such an eventuality, the magistrate has to provide an opportunity to the informant who has given information to the police. Or if under section 156 subclass 3, if the reference has been made for investigation and report is submitted under section 173, in such an eventuality, the magistrate has to look into the complaint averments and the report submitted by the police. If he is of the opinion that a closure order has to be passed, he has to provide an opportunity to so as to enable the complainant to question the same before the court. So normally what we call it as a protest petition that is going to be filed by the complainant or the informant. So after going through the protest report, or if it is a private complaint, complaint averments. Even in the Supreme Court has said in various cases that suppose protest petition is not filed, only memo has been filed by the complainant stating that the police report cannot be accepted because the police officer has not conducted the investigation in proper manner. Therefore, take cognizance on the basis of my private complaint. The private complaint itself will act as a protest petition to the report submitted by the police under section 169 or under section 169, sorry, not 170, 169. So in such an eventuality, the magistrate will go through the entire material report submitted by the police. If the magistrate is of the opinion that neither the complaint averments nor the protest petition discloses any commission of the offense, it will not properly constitute any offense. In such an eventuality, rejecting the protest petition, he can pass the closure order there itself. If on the basis of the protest petition or on the basis of the private complaint originally filed, if on reading the protest petition or the complaint, if it discloses the offense, any offense, whether it is a cognizable offense or a non-cognizable offense, in such an eventuality, the magistrate can take cognizance of the offenses and proceed according to section 200. If on the basis of the report itself, without looking into the protest petition or the private complaint, if the report itself discloses an offense being committed by the accused, in such an eventuality, irrespective of the nature of the opinion of the police officer that it is not a fit case, no sufficient evidence is available, irrespective of that opinion, the magistrate can formulate his own opinion that there is a case to proceed against the accused. In such an eventuality, superseding the opinion of the police, the magistrate can take cognizance of the offences made out even in the B report or the 169 opinion report based on 169 opinion. The magistrate can proceed to take cognizance and then he can proceed to issue process after following other procedure. That is what section 169 report is concerned. Second thing is, if the magistrate is of the opinion that the police officer have not properly investigated the matter, they have simply formed an opinion without any basis, in such an eventuality, the magistrate has got power to direct the police to further investigate the matter and submit the report. In such an eventuality, the police officer has to further investigate as per any directions issued by the magistrate, but no such direction can be issued to the police to file a charge sheet. They can only file the report. Therefore, if the again police report is filed after further investigation, the same procedure has to be followed by the magistrate, either passing the closure order or for the purpose of taking cognizance or for the purpose of proceeding against the accused after following procedure under section 204 of Criminal Procedure Code. So here, one thing should be borne in mind that under section 169 or under section 170, the magistrate, after, if he takes cognizance, he started inquiring into it with the matter. So inquiry begins to start after the magistrate take cognizance before the court. Trial starts after recording of the plea or after recording of the charges. So before framing of the charge and proceed to the trial, till that point of time, whatever the inquiry that has been made by the magistrate, it falls under the category of inquiry. So here, if suppose the magistrate comes to the conclusion after taking cognizance or even before taking of cognizance, to some extent under section on the basis of the report under section 169 or 170, that some other person is also involved in committing the offense, but the police officer have not made that man as a accused, or if in the protest petition or in the private complaint some other person's name is also incorporated, but no investigation has been done so far as that person is concerned, and no report has been submitted by the police. In such an eventuality, two options, as I have told you, that the magistrate can refer it back to the police for further investigation, or if the case is made out under section 319 of Criminal Procedure Code, that is, during the course of investigation, the police have collected material but not incorporated the name of that accused. In spite of materials available, the police have left out the name of one of the accused persons. So exercising the powers under section 319, the magistrate has got power to take cognizance against such person also, even though the charge sheet or the report under section 169 or under section 170, it doesn't discloses the opinion of the police officer about that particular person. The distinction here we have to make it is that this power is not available to the sessions judges, because once the matter is committed to the Court of Sessions, the inquiry begins only at the time of hearing the accused for the purpose of framing of charges. So there cannot be any evidence before the sessions judge for the purpose of taking cognizance or issuing process. The taking cognizance and issuing process until the committing the case to the Court of Session or till the trial begins before the magistrate, the inquiry should be conducted by the magistrate himself. Therefore, only after recording of the evidence, if the sessions judge is of the opinion that some other person is also involved, then only he can proceed against that man also under section 319. But the magistrate, even before that, he can exercise that power under section 319, basing on the report of the police either under section 169 or under section 170. So 169, another important aspect should be looked into is that if 169 is looked into, the magistrate the police have to take bond. If they take bond, it will enable the magistrate, if the closure order is passed, to close it and discharge the accused from the bond. Or if he takes cognizance on the basis of 169, he can call upon the accused before the court. That is the reason. So far as 170 is concerned, it is normally what we call it as a charge sheet. Section 1A prescribes that the investigation in relation to rape of a child may be completed within 3 months from the date on which the information was recorded by the officer in charge of police station, and immediately after completion of the report, and its contents have to be submitted to the police in a prescribed form. So here limitation though prescribed under 1A, but it only says that the police may submit the report within such and such a time if the case is registered with reference to the rape on a child. This is by way of amendment dated 13/12/2019 has been incorporated in Criminal Procedure Code. So far as the other provisions subclass 2 is concerned, it refers to as soon as the investigation is completed. You see, the first provision, unnecessary delay should not be done, and second clause says that as soon as the investigation is completed, then the investigation report has to be submitted containing various important aspects, that is name of the parties, the complainant, informant, accused, details have to be given, nature of the information, that is facts constituting the offenses, and the names of the persons who appear to be acquainted with the circumstances, that is witnesses, and whether any offense appears to have been committed, and if so, by whom, that is the name and details of the accused, and whether accused has been arrested and has been released either under section 169 or under section 170. Under section 170, again, the question arises, the magistrate, the police officer has to take bond if it is a bailable offense and he has got power to release the accused on bail. If it is non-bailable offenses, immediately the charge sheet is filed within 24 hours after completion of the investigation. If the accused is in custody of the police, the accused has to be sent to the magistrate. If during the course of investigation, if the accused has already been released on bail, either under section 438 or under section 439 or under section 437 Criminal Procedure Code, in such an eventuality, the report has to be submitted, making it clear as to when and on what date the accused has already been released on bail. And whether medical report, so far as the woman is concerned, examination, the report has to be submitted. This has been amended by incorporating this provision with effect from 13/12/2009 and 3/2/2019, incorporating certain provisions under the Indian Penal Code. Subclass 2, the officer, it is the duty of the officer to communicate the report submitted either under section 169 or under section 170 to the first informant. As I have told you that filing of the protest petition or challenging the report submitted by the police, even under section 170, as I told you, if some of the accused person's name has not been incorporated, the complainant or the prosecution may seek for further investigation before the court, etc. Therefore, whatever the report, whether it is under section 169 or under section 170 opinion, the report shall be communicated to the complainant so as to enable him to question the report if necessary. So the subclass 4 contemplates that the report forwarded in this section and the magistrate can pass a closure order under section 169. This provision is applicable when the closure order is passed by the magistrate. He has to apply his judicious mind. If he simply accepts it without providing an opportunity, that vitiates the proceedings and the complainant can approach the higher courts for the purpose of setting aside that order. You might have come across under section 482 of Criminal Procedure Code. Vastly, the High Court and the Supreme Court exercises their powers to an order to complete. It should be a logical completion of the report submitted by the police. When it is not logically concluded, in such an eventuality, the party will get the important, that is the power in that regard. Subclass 5 is another important aspect where the report is filed under section 170. In such an eventuality, all the materials collected by the police, whether it is material objects or the witnesses report or the report in respect of relevant extracts of documents, everything should be submitted. And under subclass 5, the police officer may state that all the details need not be disclosed to the accused, that is under subclass 6. He can request the magistrate that some of the report or some of the statement of the witnesses, it need not be disclosed to the accused. But he has to be specifically stated therein why those should not be disclosed to the accused. In spite of that, it has the power of the magistrate or function of the magistrate to examine after hearing the accused, if necessary, to pass an order that it is necessary to provide a copy to the accused to defend himself. It is those documents are not privileged documents, nor those statements are privileged statements, so as to refuse to grant the copy of those documents or the statement of the witnesses to the accused. But under various circumstances, you might have come across that under the Indian Evidence Act, certain privileges are attached. In spite of that, Ignoring that, the police officers have recorded the statement of the witnesses with reference to the relationship between husband and wife. What happened in the bedroom, nobody can question either the wife or the accused. In spite of that, the police records the statement. And ultimately, the magistrate comes to the conclusion those statements are privileged. Or if there is any bar under any law for the time being enforced, that such statements should not be recorded, or such documents should not be disclosed with reference to, for example, the sovereign powers of the state, sovereignty of the state. Some public officers are not authorized to disclose the internal attitude of the state or the center. So in such circumstances only, the police officer can provide it in a sealed cover and request the magistrate not to disclose it to the accused till the trial commences. But still, I have told you that it is the power of the magistrate to apply his judicious mind, whether really that request of the police officer is correct or not. So under subsection 7, furnishing of the copy of the final report to the accused. You see, it can be discussed with reference to section 207 of Criminal Procedure Code and this provision. Here, it is only said that when the police officer investigative finds it convenient to do so, he may furnish. Convenient, may furnish. So it is not obligatory or mandatory on the part of the investigating officer to provide the copy of any statement or document to the accused. But it is mandatory under section 207 of Criminal Procedure Code. So therefore, I have told you that even if the police officer gives his opinion that some of the documents should not be given to the accused, and they have collected the material by way of electronic evidence, by way of compact disc, CD, etc. And the magistrate has to apply his mind under section 207, which are the materials that should not be disclosed to the accused at that time. And if the prosecution wants to rely upon that, the copy has to be provided for the purpose of preparing the defense. So last and finally is the further investigation. This is a major important provision under section 173. Section 173 subclass 8, which discloses that nothing precludes the police officer to file further report after any further investigation is done, even after submitting a report under section 173 of the code. So therefore, it might not have been used by the legislators in section 173 as it is a final report. So therefore, it is only called as a report when it becomes final, only when the judgment is pronounced and acquitting or convicting the accused. So till that point of time, we say that it is investigation, inquiry, and trial. So during the time of investigation, inquiry, and trial, during the course of investigation, 169, 170, and filing the report under section 173. During the course of inquiry and trial, further investigation can be done and report can be submitted to the court. If further investigation is submitted, whether the magistrate order is required for the purpose of further investigation, fell into consideration before the Supreme Court and various high courts. Though the Supreme Court and the high courts have said that no such permission is required, but it should be brought to the notice of the magistrate that the police are still investigating the matter, so that the magistrate can, to some extent, wait for that further report. Otherwise, again, he should come back for the purpose of taking cognizance and proceed with the matter. So therefore, no permission is required by the magistrate for further investigation, but the magistrate can himself order for further investigation. As I told you, even under section 169 or 170, the opinion is there. If the magistrate feels that the investigation has not been properly done, he can refer it for further investigation for the purpose of filing the report. There are various decisions I have quoted, but due to the paucity of time, because it is already 1857, only 45 minutes has been provided to me because so many important aspects I have to tell because of paucity of time. If any question arises, I think I can clarify that.
I think that we can continue with the session, because once the session is clear, we may not take the questions, or we can take the question on some other session. Because once the concept is clear, I think that would be much better than taking the question as such.
Then I shall continue for another 15-20 minutes.
Yes, sir. Because I at least the group believes that if the concept is clear, the questions automatically
Okay.
evaporate, I can say.
Okay, then you see, as I've told you that all the documents are necessarily to be produced before the court. In some cases, it happens that the police officer will prepare the report in such a manner that some documents which are relied upon by the prosecution, some documents which are though collected during the course of investigation, not relied upon by the prosecution. There are two types of documents and statements are recorded. It normally happens in prevention of corruption cases, particularly with regard to amassing wealth cases. The police go on investigating the matter, collecting the materials, and even record the statement of the accused, and as well as the statements which go in favor of the accused, and documents go in favor of the accused. But they don't want to rely upon. But the ultimate goal of the court or the prosecution and the defense is that to find out the truth, what exactly the truth on the basis of such a report placed before the court. Therefore, in such circumstances, all the documents, though, cannot be relied upon by the prosecution. But in spite of that, if those documents are collected, that can be relied upon by the accused during the course of the trial. Or even the Supreme Court has gone to the extent of saying that those documents which are sterling in nature and conclusive in nature, and they are admitted documents, that can be relied upon even by the court while exercising the powers under Section 482 of Criminal Procedure Code for the purpose of quashing the proceedings. But the caution is that it should be of sterling quality, and either it is a conclusive proof or it must have been admitted materials on record. So this has been considered that by the apex court in Satyanarayan Musadi and others versus State of Bihar. So police officers' discretion is questioned, and whether he can ask the magistrate to not to disclose the statements and the documents which are produced before the court. That, as I have told you, that the court has got power to ignore that request of the police and order for disclosure of such facts and passing of the copy of the statements or the documents to the accused. This has been considered in a very famous case, that V.K. Sasikala versus State of Superintendent of Police, EIR 2013, Supreme Court, page 613. So furnishing the copy of the report to the accused, as I told you, it is not mandatory, but it is mandatory under Section 207 that has been considered by the Supreme Court in Gurbachan Singh versus State of Punjab, AIR 1957, Supreme Court, page 623. The non-furnishing of the report to the accused has been questioned, and the Karnataka High Court said that it is a curable defect. It is not, because it is not obligatory. No fault can be found with the police officer. So far as this further investigation is concerned, I want to elaborate something more. How long this report can be filed before the court? Till the, in my opinion, till the judgment is pronounced or the trial is completed, till that point of time, the further reports can be filed. How many reports can be filed? Any number of reports can be filed, because there is no embargo. It will not preclude the police officer, but the only condition is that with reference to the same subject matter or the fact in issue or a relevant fact involved in that particular case, the police have investigated, some more information has been gathered, and therefore they want to file the further report, further investigation report to the court. So this has been considered by the apex court in Kashmiri Devi versus Delhi Administration, AIR 1988, SCC page supplement 482. Mohanlal Sharma versus State of UP, 1989, subclass bracket 2, SCC page 500. If multiple cases are there, multiple FIRs are lodged, whether multiple further reports can be, final reports can be, so rather reports can be filed under section 173. It happens that, as you know, that in the Indian Evidence Act, if the transaction is one, cause of action is one for the particular offense or offenses involved in that particular case, there may be sometimes various first information reports have been submitted differently. The police go on registering separate cases for each and every FIR. In such circumstances, in recently Arnab's case, the Supreme Court has considered this particular aspect. In various other decisions also it has considered. If the cause of action is one and it is arising out of the same transaction, the only one FIR has to be registered, that is first in point of time. But first in point of time has to be tested that it has disclosed the cognizable offense so as to enable the police to register the case. It need not be an encyclopedia, but it should at least disclose commission of a cognizable offense so as to enable the police to register the case and proceed with the investigation. If they started investigation after registering a case, in such an eventuality, whatever may be the subsequent information that has been received by the police, that should not be registered as independent cases, and no independent reports have to be filed under section 173 of the code. So if such reports are filed, what the magistrate has to do? The magistrate has to examine with reference to these two aspects whether the cause of action is same and the transaction is one and the same. In such an eventuality, he has to consolidate all the charge sheets and hold one trial, so far as the accused persons are concerned. So therefore, one report is contemplated, even multiple FIRs are filed. But here one has to understand that the FIR discloses a different cause of action and arising out of a different transaction. In such an eventuality, it should not be merged with the original FIR, and independently it should be investigated. You see, this will happen in case and counter cases. In case and counter cases, there will be two FIRs with reference to the same cause of action, with reference to the same transaction. But the transaction though same and cause of action same, but allegations are different, which requires a detailed, independent, separate investigation. That's why Supreme Court has said that if a case and counter case are there, they should be separately investigated and they should be separately tried, and it should not be clubbed. Ultimately, the court has to take up the matter simultaneously, not clubbing both the matters. It should take one after another, but on the same day, the judgment has to be pronounced. Two judgments should be there. Different prosecutors have to be appointed, and same investigating officer has to investigate to find out the truth. If two charge sheets are filed, if two reports are filed, two independently should be tried by the magistrate or the sessions court, so that it is altogether a different expression on the same subject matter by two persons complainants. According to one complainant, the other persons have committed the offense, they have not committed the offense, or they will come under any of the exceptions. Likewise, the opposite party will also plead in the same manner. Therefore, they should not be clubbed. In several cases, what happened? The matter has been clubbed, common evidence has been recorded, which was found as vitiated by the courts. Or secondly, what the magistrates have done, that they have read one charge sheet into another charge sheet while dealing with the bail matters and while dealing with framing of the charges, etc. They have made it complex. Therefore, the Supreme Court and the other high courts have said that with regard to framing of the charge, recording of the plea, and then trial, they should be separate and independent, but they should be simultaneous, one after another. That is what has been stated by the Karnataka High Court and the Apex Court. In 2017 Karnataka Law Journal, page 323, Srimati Vishalakshi Bhatt versus State of Karnataka by Sagar Town Police. In Srimati Anuradha versus State of Karnataka, 2018 AKR, page 703, and Atul Rao versus State of Karnataka, AIR 2017, Supreme Court, page 4021, Pooja Pal versus Union of India and others, AIR 2016, Supreme Court, page 1345. In these decisions, the Supreme Court has considered these particular aspects. So far as further investigation is concerned, though it is the prerogative of the police, they should show to the court that it is actually the further information they have received. Sometimes it happens that awaiting the chemical report or the forensic science laboratory report or DNA report, because the accused should not escape from the clutches of law, applying the principles under section 167 subclass 2, they will file the report. What is the consequence if they file the report subsequently after getting the information from them? That is the DNA report or the chemical examiner's report, etc. The Supreme Court and the High Courts have said that though it is called as a final report, that whatever the report available as on the date of filing it, the court should treat it as a final report. The court should not expect that the police are still investigating the matter and they may file further report, and it should not postpone the granting of the bail or considering of section 167 of Criminal Procedure Code. So whatever the materials available, what section 438, 439 or 437 says that as on the date of filing of the bail application or hearing the bail application by the court, whatever the material available, on the basis of that, whether the accused is entitled for bail or not has to be looked into. Not that the police may file further investigation report and therefore the court has to wait. That is not the concept of considering the bail petitions. So these are all the aspects should be borne in mind. The further investigation also, we should bear in mind that it is not that it is totally a re-investigation or undo the investigation already been done. The police officer, on the guise that a further investigation has been directed, it should not treat it what are the already the investigation has been done, which has already before the court he has submitted the report. Contrary to that, he cannot undo the investigation already done or totally re-investigate the matter unless the court orders for re-investigation. It happens only in the case of 482 or when the appellate court hearing the matter on appeal. In some cases, the re-investigation has been ordered and totally after re-investigation, de novo trial has been ordered. So magistrate has no power for that, nor the police can redo the investigation or undo the investigation already been done. This has been considered in various cases. That is in K. Anubhasgan, General Secretary, DMK Party versus Superintendent of Police, 2012, 2 KCCR, page 1489 by the Supreme Court, and Rita Nag versus State of West Bengal, 2009, 9 SCC, page 129. So these are all the important informations what I have gone through so far as section 173 with other connected provisions are concerned. Now I conclude with once again I thank the organizers for having provided me this opportunity to share few of my thoughts with reference to this report of the police officers under section 173. Thank you. Please proceed.
Rather, it only reflects your humility. We are, in fact, we have all been enriched by the knowledge what you have shown of wide spectrum, the deeper perspectives of law, which ordinarily could not have been summed up in an hour or 15 minutes. We will start taking the questions.
Please.
This is by Tejaswini. Whether police needs permission of magistrate to transfer documents and material seized in the case to another police station where FIR is lodged even though still the case is in the crime stage and no report has been filed by the police.
If the police officer is of the opinion that the police officer has no jurisdiction to investigate the matter, and if we want to transfer the same, it is only information is submitted to the magistrate. No permission is required to transmit the same to the other police station, because the police lacks the jurisdiction to investigate. Then only he can transmit the same. For example, if an FIR is filed, and on the basis of FIR, assuming the jurisdiction that he has got jurisdiction to investigate, in such an eventuality, he comes to the conclusion that it ought to have been investigated by the other police station. In such an eventuality, he can transmit it, informing the magistrate that with reference to the transmission, no particular order is required from the magistrate, to my knowledge.
So this is by Raman. Charge sheet had been filed by the police in FIR, and I was arraigned, but not known where cognizance has taken by the learned magistrate. My appointing authority is saying that the case is pending against me. Is the case pending where the name is in column number 2 as found innocent?
No, if the cognizance is not taken, and even if the report is filed before the police, before the court, if no cognizance is taken, it cannot be said any case is pending before the court at all. Only after taking cognizance, the role of the accused appears before the court. If the process is issued by the magistrate, because as I have told you, mere filing of the report doesn't mean to say that the court has taken cognizance. The court may pass a closure order, or it may order for further investigation, or even the court may say that the entire investigation is not properly conducted. So till the process is issued, the court it cannot be said that it is a case pending before the court. The information, even information that a report is submitted by the police, it doesn't mean to say that the court has to take cognizance on the basis of the report. Once only after taking cognizance, the role of accused comes before the court. Yes.
In fact, there are judgments to that effect that once it is in the name of column number 2, we have a judgment from our High Court also, which says then the appointment cannot be refused to such a person, because
That's right.
There's nothing relying upon a Supreme Court judgment by Justice Jaswant Singh which says that you have to give an appointment to such a person because he's not
right.
under the black clouds.
Correct. Even some of the high courts gone to the extent of saying that mere pendency of the case, if suppose accused is discharged, the framing of the charge is the criteria for the purpose of refusing to grant the appointment, or during the course of departmental inquiry also, for the purpose of granting promotion and other things. Framing of the charges by the department people or framing of the charges by the court is the criteria, because police may file a charge sheet without any material. In such an eventuality, the court may discharge the accused. So once it frames the charges, that may become a criteria either for refusing the appointment or for the purpose of refusing the promotion. Some of the high courts have taken that view also.
So Supreme Court in KV Janki Raman, that Supreme Court says that you keep it in the seal cover. Let's assume it's a promotion.
That's right.
It creates a subtle difference between a disciplinary proceeding that says from the framing of charge and in both the cases, civil as well as criminal, it says
virtually,
you can keep it in the sealed cover.
Yes. Virtually keeping it in sealed cover, giving promotion to that man subject to the decision. That means he should not be deprived of the promotion from the date he is entitled to. Therefore, on the date itself, promotion virtually given, though it is in sealed cover. But if the charges are framed or if he is found guilty, that the promotion will not be given. If not, that will date back to the date of his right to promotion.
In fact, the person who is promoted, it is written on that his case has been kept under the sealed cover, yes. And therefore you cannot be. Your rights are subject to the final decision of that case.
That's
this
right.
is when Nikhil, in case police forges an original complaint on which FIR is registered. As dates are changed, as another civil case was pending in parallel, where complainant came to know the dates. Both copies of the complainant, that is original obtained under the RTI and forged obtained with the charge sheet obtained. What action can be taken against the IEO and complainant, as also evidence are destroyed, not filed with the charge sheet?
So it is that particular aspect, in my opinion, can only be questioned before the High Court under Section 482 of Criminal Procedure Code. The magistrate at that particular stage may not be having any powers to either to pass any orders against the police officer. If the magistrate goes on trial, it should be established during the course of the trial with reference to those manipulations made by the police officer or by any officer. It should be proved before the court. If it is proved, then only action can be taken by the magistrate for that particular act. Even under Section 195 also, the magistrate can take appropriate action, or independently also the magistrate can direct the concerned authorities to initiate disciplinary proceedings, departmental proceedings, and also lodge a first information report against that particular officer. If it is a challenge under Section 482 of Criminal Procedure Code, as I have told you, if the materials are of sterling quality and where the High Court can come to the conclusion that it is conclusive in nature or it has admitted facts are there by the opposite party also, there is no bar for the High Court or the Supreme Court to direct the investigation about such police officer, or even it can direct to, if it is still under investigation, it can transfer it to some other police officer for investigation.
So this is by Praveen Kumar. Police has not filed the documents along with the challan/final report collected during the investigation. What remedy is available to the accused, that is to file an application under Section 207 or 91 of the CRPC?
No, why you have to file it is the question. If the Section 173 subclass 5 or 6 say that what are the documents that have been relied upon the prosecution, only those documents supposed to be filed by the police officer. As I told you that if those documents are available with the accused, at the time of trial only it can be called upon, not at the initial stages, because the magistrate cannot rely upon the documents submitted by the accused to the court, or it cannot be summoned by the court at that particular point of time. But under Section 482, it can be done by the High Court, because it is the prerogative of the police to submit the report to the court, which are the documents they rely upon before the court.
This is by Raghav Tanaji. How do you compel the police to file the charge sheet under Section 173 when there is a long delay?
That is again a discretionary order by the court. As I told you that under Section 468, the limitation is prescribed. When unnecessary delay has to be considered at the time of considering the charge sheet for the purpose of discharging the accused, or only on the basis of the delay, the court may not discharge the accused. But if it is beyond the period of limitation, here unnecessary delay will not occur, but it is a delay barred by limitation. Unnecessary delay, it all depends upon the facts and circumstances of each case. It is the discretion vested with the court how that unnecessary delay has to be considered. It cannot be pointed out by means of any illustrations, because the delay may occur under certain circumstances. The police may explain such a delay. For example, the same principle is if we apply to first information report. If a delayed first information report is there, how the court will apply its judicious mind for the purpose of considering that FIR, delayed FIR. The same principles almost is applicable, but that delay itself at the initial stages is sufficient when it is not barred by limitation to altogether throw out the case without providing opportunity to the prosecution and the accused.
This is by GCPA. If there is a delay in filing report due to delay in FSL report, can complainant approach under writ jurisdiction?
Complainant?
Yes, sir.
Yes, complainant. Anybody can approach either the accused or the complainant. Anybody can approach the High Court, because under Section 482 or under Section 226, vast powers is there. If any procedural irregularity is there or illegality is there, that can be corrected by the High Court. But the question is that what amount of delay that has been occurred, how it has caused prejudice to the complainant, has to be explained. If the court is of the opinion that there is prejudice occurred or deliberately that has been withheld and not sent to the court, then the court can pass appropriate orders in this regard. Give a direction, writ of mandamus directing the concerned authorities to furnish the report as early as possible, fixing the time, etc.
The three participants have asked, though it's a normal question, what is zero FIR?
What is?
Zero FIR.
Zero FIR. Zero FIR.
Yes, sir.
Without constituting any offense, any material, without anything is there in the FIR. Under section 158 of the Criminal Procedure Code, 157 and 158, after registering a case under section 156, if he proceeds to investigate the matter, finds absolutely no material with reference to such FIR contents, then that will become no FIR in the eye of law. Then it will, a closure order will be sought by the police. Even it is applicable to the private complaint. If private complaint is filed under section 190 of the Criminal Procedure Code, the magistrate has to apply his judicious mind to ascertain whether there are any facts disclosing constitution of any offense. If no information or facts are there to constituting any offense, it is no complaint in the eye of law. That becomes zero.
So zero FIR won't be that case wherein the FIR is registered at some other police station which does not have the jurisdiction, and we transfer it to some other bench, to the competent court.
To the competent court.
Zero FIR invariably in common parlance, don't we say that where the FIR is lost, it does not have the jurisdiction, and ultimately it is transferred to the court, to the jurisdiction which is competent.
Jurisdiction police.
Yes, I will just also check.
Or the court.
I'll just check.
No, that in my opinion, that cannot be called as a zero FIR. Because in my perception of law is that if once the cognizable offense is committed, for example, I will illustrate like this. If a murder has taken place, instead of lodging the FIR before the competent police, the FIR is lodged before some other police. Can it be said the police should not register it at all and proceed to the investigation immediately, or they have to ask the complainant to go and file the complaint to some other police and take assistance? No, it is the immediate action should be taken in such a costly offense has been taken place. Therefore, it cannot be called, in my opinion, it cannot be called as a zero FIR. After registration, if he finds that he has no jurisdiction, he can transmit the FIR to that particular police station for investigation. And they can also register in their police station giving a separate number. Because the immediate action is required there. It is just like that, just like an injured going to a private clinic, asking the private clinic doctor, asking for registration of a case and then come. Wherever immediate action is required, then in my opinion, it cannot be called as a zero FIR. It is an FIR registered before the court. Inherent jurisdiction or the jurisdiction with reference to the territorial jurisdiction is altogether different. Inherent, where the police themselves have absolutely no jurisdiction. Police cannot take any action at all. In such an eventuality, we can say that it is lack of inherent jurisdiction. For example, under various provisions, only private complaint has to be filed by the complainant. Then he files the FIR. Then the police lacks inherent jurisdiction there. Then they cannot take cognizance, or they cannot take the FIR and investigate the matter and file the report to the court. That is lack of inherent jurisdiction. That is my perception of law. I may be wrong. I don't know.
In the Google, I just checked it out. It says it means that the FIR can be filed in any police station, that is irrespective of the place of incident/jurisdiction, and the same can later be transferred to the appropriate police station having competent jurisdiction after the investigation and filing with the magistrate. Hence, such FIR is known as zero FIR.
No, this is my perception of law, what I say.
Yes, sir. Sir, it says, what is the distinction between...
I told you that I may be wrong also.
No, sir, it's perfect. We are also not very...
No, it is just like everybody should be innovative. And everybody should be, it is my interpretation of law and perception of law. If merely because some other police say that I have no jurisdiction, go to that police station. It is his duty to look into that, because ghastly incident has happened. Immediate assistance is required. If another police station is situated somewhere more than 20 or 50 kilometers, immediately he has to then transmit it.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Yes, please.
That's what it's saying. It's the transmission to the competent territorial jurisdiction.
That's right. That's right.
Yes, sir. And this is, we will take the last question. Distinction between a cancellation report and a closure report.
Cancellation report is without the jurisdiction if the magistrate files the report. For example, as I told you that a private complaint has to be filed. Instead of that, the police have investigated the matter and submitted the report. There is no question of magistrate accepting that particular report. It can totally reject it, and closure report cannot be passed. Closure report means if under section 169 of Criminal Procedure Code, if the opinion of the police officer is that a false case has been done, no detectable case is there, or it is purely a civil in nature, and after giving opportunity to the other side, the magistrate closes it. That is what we can infer that it is a closure of the case.
So we'll just take, because 2 questions. Sir, if an accused is voluntarily appeared before the magistrate and confesses his act, then who can prepare the report?
Please repeat the question.
Sir, this is by Ganesh Tiwari. No, it is Kumara NJ. If an accused voluntarily appears before the magistrate and confesses his act, then who can prepare that report?
The confession is recorded under section 164 of Criminal Procedure Code, and also under the criminal rules of practice after following certain procedure. That investigation, if it is pending, if the accused goes to the magistrate and gives the confession, and the magistrate has to record it in accordance with law, and that confession report shall form part and parcel of the charge sheet by the police. It should be sent to the police. It should be a part and parcel of the charge sheet, and he can file it along with the charge sheet. That can be considered later. If after framing of the charges, at the time of framing of the charges, if confession takes place, then you know that confession and retracted confession, and how that confession has to be considered as a corroborative piece of evidence. If the prosecution itself fails to prove the case, what is the value of that confession? All those things will come with reference to confession, how to accept the confession. It is a statement by the accused under section 164. So 164 statement given by some other witness, or by the approver, or by any witness, or by the accused, it makes no difference. That is available to the prosecution at the time of trial. It should form part and parcel of the entire report.
Since the questions are keep on pouring, this is the last question we will be taking. Ganesh Tiwari, what does protest petition mean, sir? And how is it applicable under this section?
So under section 169, if the opinion of the police is to the effect that no case is made out or no sufficient evidence is available, with that opinion, he files the report under section 173. If it is arising out of the first information report, then protest petition has got greater value. In the protest petition, the complainant or the informant who challenges the report of the police, he has to enumerate what are all the offense committed, date, etc. It should be on par with the private complaint, so as to enable the magistrate to ascertain whether cognizance can be taken on the basis of the protest report by rejecting the report submitted by the police. So for as private complaint, as I've already explained to you, that private complaint is already there. Even in the absence of protest petition, if a memo is filed adopting the complaint amendments, the magistrate has to look into that. In addition to that, the protest petition can also be filed, and considering the protest petition and the complaint amendments and the report, the police, the magistrate can reject the report and take cognizance and proceed further under section 204 CRPC or under section 203. Protest petition should be in the nature of a private complaint. It should disclose the facts constituting any offense, enabling the magistrate to take cognizance.
Yes.
Okay.
So we won't take any questions. I will ask Mr. Prem, though I will also formally propose a vote of thanks, since he is also himself an erudite speaker. Plus, he's also
Okay.
running a webinar. He will contact you also
Very good. Excellent.
to give his insights. I'm just unmuting Mr. Prem.
Okay.
They have they just like our Beyond Law CLC, they also have a webinar series under the name of Shampathan.
They are also
Yes,
doing
Prem.
this. Okay.
Yes, sir. Yeah, Prem.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. It was an absolutely erudite and rather and very enlightening session about the whole of the topic. Now, sir, with regard to the zero FIR, I think this particular notion comes in after Lalita Kumari's full bench decision, where the Apex Court lays down certain guidelines with respect to the registering of an FIR. If it is established that an offense in the FIR, it is cognizable, then the police cannot refuse to register the FIR.
That's
So
right.
it is mandatory. So this particular notion to institute a zero FIR, it's a jurisdiction-free FIR actually, which was of course introduced by the recommendation of Justice Verma Committee in the Amendment Act to the Criminal Law Amendment Act of 2013 after the Delhi raid case. And registering an FIR was not mandatory prior to this particular amendment, which comes after this Lalita Kumari.
Yes.
So zero FIR, what now the court goes on to say is that you can file or you can furnish an information to any police station, and an FIR can be filed at any police station, irrespective of the place of the crime or the area of the territorial jurisdiction, because we have several judgments of the Supreme Court which are which would say that the limits of the territorial jurisdiction of a police station, that is coextensive with the jurisdiction of the magistrate to which that particular station is attached. So this concept of zero FIR comes after 2013, so that you can go and file an FIR irrespective of the territorial jurisdiction, and the police will later transfer to the police station which has the competent jurisdiction to conduct the investigation thereon. I think that's the concept of zero FIR. And sir, I would just ask you one, because towards the last portion of your talk, you had mentioned Rita Nag's case, saying that the magistrate, of course, is having the suo motu power to order for an investigation.
Yeah.
This Rita Nag was a 2009 decision. And subsequently, before Rita Nag, we had that Randhir Singh Rana versus State of Delhi Administration. That's a 97 1 SCC 361. So I think this Rita Nag's judgment and Randhir Singh, that has not taken care of Bhagwan Singh, which is again during 1985, which is a 3-judge bench decision. And later on in Vinay Tyagi's case, that is 2013 5 SCC 762. I'm not sure of the exact page number, maybe the page number varies because I think it is 762. I think that Rita Nag has been doubted in Vinay Tyagi.
That's why I have quoted one more decision in Dilawar versus State of Haryana,
Exactly.
2018, 16 SCC page 521.
Correct.
And yes, and another decision today I have noted, that is Virubhai Haribhai
by Justice
Alvia,
Correct.
State of Gujarat,
State of,
in
exactly.
JT 2019 10 SC page 537.
That
So
is
these, the Bhagwan Singh's case and the Srina's case and this another case which you have quoted from 2018, all those decisions are now quoted by the Supreme Court.
But
in
sir,
this latest step.
Of course, sir, I know that Vinubhai Haribai, that's a 3-judge bench, which was headed by Justice Rohinton Nariman. But sir,
Yes.
Vinubhai Haribai, it's a 2019 decision, AR 2019 5347 or something like 5374, I think. So in Vinubhai Haribai, what matters is, he goes on to, Justice Nariman goes on to consider, one is Devarapalli Lakshmi Narayana Reddy and Bhagwan Das. Now, Devarapalli Lakshmi Narayana Reddy, what he goes on to say, Justice Nariman goes on to say, at that point of time, he did not consider the definition of investigation in section 2 in Devarapalli, which again is a 3-judge bench decision. So one 3-judge against another 2 3-judges in the past. Normally, sir, which should prevail? Because Justice Nariman's also is a 3-judge bench decision. Devarapalli Lakshmi Narayana Reddy is another 3-judge bench decision. Of course, it has been referred to in this 3-judge. But sir, what is the actually?
According to the law of precedents, the latest judgment, even though it is comprising of the same that is judges, or the number of judges, the latest decision prevails comparatively to the older judgment, though it is comprising of same number of judges. If it is of the 2 judges benches, against that 3 judges benches will prevail.
Yes,
Unless the latest judges who have come across the previous 3 judges benches differing from the previous 3 judges benches, normally they should ask for constitution of the larger
Correct.
bench.
correct. That
They
is what.
if they have not done, that is the principle laid down by the latest judgment should be followed. That is the law of precedence.
But
So
sir,
it virtually supersedes the earlier same quorum judgment.
absolutely true, sir. But again,
Though we may not accept logically the latest judgment, practically telling you that though we are not agreeable for accepting the latest judgment, because we feel that earlier 3 judges bench are logically correct and legally correct. But in
Correct.
spite of that, the latest judgment should otherwise they have to ask for larger bench, reference to the larger bench.
Exactly, that was to be done because we have the Dawoodi Bohra community case, which is a constitutional bench decision of the Supreme Court during 2005, which would say that a co-equal strength bench cannot even doubt the correctness of another co-equal bench. In that
That's right.
particular case, of course, if the Chief Justice is a part of that bench, of course, he can do that. Unless it is so, they have to refer it to the Chief Justice so that Chief Justice can have a larger bench.
Yes.
Or else
Even the one of the Supreme Court decision, Justice Gajendra Gadkar's case earlier, I don't exactly remember the case. What he says that even if you want to differ from the earlier judgment, you have to express your opinion and then seek for larger bench's decision.
Correct.
Simply saying that I am not accepting the judgment, therefore refer it to larger bench. That is not correct view. You should say how logically you differ from the earlier judgment.
Absolutely true, sir. Absolutely true.
Legally and logically, you have to give a reasons so as to enable the Chief Justice to refer it to the larger bench.
Absolutely true, sir. So I have been a very great fan of you because I have read several of your judgments, which you are a very, very innovative judge. Because even though you go by law, you combine law, logic, reality, and practicality.
That is what you see. If you read Section 114 of Indian Evidence Act, presumptions just prior to, in under what circumstances you can rely upon the presumption. Earlier to that, it say that what are the important factors that should be considered by a court.
Correct, sir.
Beautifully, it is said.
Correct, sir.
Yes.
Thank you so much, sir, for this erudite and enlightening talk. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much. I once again thank all the participants also having participated and providing me an opportunity to share a few of my thoughts, what I know. And you see, I am always assertive so far as my opinions are concerned, even if it is wrong. But I will give my own logical reasons for that. That is what you said. It should be, always judges should be innovative.
Yes, sir, because you are one of the most innovative judges I have ever come across, because I have read almost all of your judgments, because very innovative, because from a practical standpoint of view, even though there are precedents, you can surmount this precedents by using judicial wisdom.
I have even distinguished many of the Supreme Court decisions, and I have taken my own decision.
Absolutely true. That is today I told Vikas also that you are such a very wonderful judge, and you should. I told Vikas you should read his judgments. Absolutely wonderful judgments.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Once again, thank you.